another episode of Conscious Parenting Live. Our goal on this show is to introduce you to the people and to the ideas that will help you raise kids who are happy, who are resilient, and who have the skills they need to thrive in their world. Now, there's a really high correlation between kids who do really well academically and emotionally in the future and um, the wholesomeness of the home that they grow up in, the security and the confidence that they get from being raised in a very nurturing environment. So the question then is, how do you go about building and creating such an atmosphere? Tonight's guest is someone who's going to help us answer that question. He studied marriage and family therapy at the university. He works with individuals, couples, and families, and he's been doing this for over the last 10 years. He spent 4 years facilitating parenting classes in northern Utah, and he is the co-founder with his wife of the Life Empowerment Organization that is devoted to serving individuals, couples, and families by providing meaningful and empowering resources to strengthen the relationships that they have in their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming my friend, Andrew Chris. Hey, Andrew, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, my friend. So I know you a bit, but why don't you start by introducing yourself to the audience and telling them a bit about yourself?
All right. That's always the awkward question, right? Like, I know how to talk about the other stuff, but when it comes to talking about myself, it's a little crazy. But yeah, so I've been in the mental health or human services field for over 10 years. Started as a bachelor's in family studies and psychology, and from there realized I didn't want to do tests. I wanted to help people in a more direct way. So went on to study marriage and family therapy, which also had mental health counseling in it, and have been able to do a ton of different things with it. I've done individual, couple, and family therapy for several years now. Anything from, just kind of mild complaints to extreme trauma. So I've worked with families that have adopted children with just the most extreme traumas you can think of, unfortunately, And so I've seen the things that we're going to talk about tonight work even in that kind of environment. I've worked in mental health treatment facilities. I was a preschool teacher, which was one of the coolest times of my life, working with 3 to 4-year-olds every day with Head Start. Yeah, it was awesome. And then I've also done parenting classes, family case management. So I've worked with families and people in pretty much every capacity that you can.
That's fantastic. And I know that you have a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter, right?
I do. I have a 5-year-old son, 3-year-old daughter, and just recently got to start being a stay-at-home dad, which allowed me to start this program. We're working on doing our son has some disabilities that we're trying to work through and help him out with. So I've been able to stay home and help him with that a little bit. So it's pretty cool.
Fantastic. And it's always great when you have a guest on who has the professional backing to give really great advice, but he also has kids of his own. So it's not theoretical, like he knows what he is to live that, 24/7. All right.
And I'm living the struggle just as much.
Okay, so kicking it off, what is an empowered family? What does that mean?
Right, yeah. So the company I started was the Life Empowerment Organization, and the word empowerment really stuck out. My wife and I actually have co-founded it, and it really stuck out to us as this ability to own your life and as a family to create what you want to create inside of it. I'm assuming you want to know what an empowered parent is as well.
Of course.
And so kind of what we went with that is, with all the experience I've had of working with, parents and parenting struggles in therapy or in classes, or even as a case manager or a preschool teacher, what I noticed was there was always this focus on changing the kid. And it didn't work. It didn't. And so I started recognizing I need to work with the parent. We need to focus on the parent. And so I chose the word empowerment to kind of go along with that self-aware component. And so an empowered parent is one who they know themselves, they know their strengths, their goals, what they're hoping to be as a parent, but they also know their limitations or are learning their limitations, and they're willing to learn. Like they're still in that mode of, I can always grow, I can always try something new. Because I don't know about you, but what worked for my kid a month ago is not necessarily working today, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why we went with that empowerment, is to look at the parent and figure out, what can I do? Because I can't change, like I can't change your behavior. I can only focus on mine.
Yeah.
So it's through my behaviors and my strategies and things like that I can influence you. But ultimately, I can only change myself. And so when we started doing that with parents, really looking at ourselves, who we are, what we're trying to accomplish, most importantly, how we're trying to accomplish it. Because that's kind of what I saw is I have these goals, but the way I'm trying to go about it are not getting there. They're actually in conflict with one another.
Okay.
And so,
So just to kind of bring that home, can you give me like a hypothetical scenario? Like, for example, what kind of situations would you have noticed that a parent was in and was struggling, and what kind of advice would you have given them that would have taken them from where they were to becoming an empowered parent?
right. I'll pick a simple a scenario I had with a client once. Their kid would not pick up their room. I'm sure most of us parents have dealt with that one.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
and I don't know about you, but one of the most painful things to step on is a Lego. Barefoot, right? I mean, it's just, it hurts. And so I worked with a parent that had stepped on a Lego and had just blown up. And this is about a 4 or 5-year-old kid, and just, why can't you clean up, just getting big, getting loud, and their goal was clean up your room. That's ultimately what I'm trying to get across. And they're yelling and they're upset, and I'm in the home while this is happening. I've done some in-home services, so it was right in the moment. And we kind of brought them back, and I'm like, so what were you going for there? And they're like, well, I was trying to get them to clean up their room. So I asked, does the kid really seem to be connected to you right now? Or do you feel connected to your kid? And they were like, no, kind of thing. And I was like, what was really important, the Lego or the connection in that moment? And they're like, I focused on the Lego and I let my emotions just go crazy. I was like, right. And we just missed that opportunity to connect with our kid. So one of the first things I work with when trying to get parents to take on this more empowered mentality is, how can I connect with my kid first? It's always about connection. It's always about that relationship. If I don't have a strong relationship with my kid, I could have the coolest, fanciest parenting technique in the world, and it won't work because there's not that mutual trust or respect. That relationship's not there. So when we blow up over something as simple as a Lego, which happens, we all do it. We're human, right? We all do it. I just did it a couple nights ago over a pair of socks, like it happens. And that's where that empowered component comes in, is that self-aware. Where am I at? How am I dealing with my things, so that when I'm trying to interact with my child, I'm ready, I'm there, I'm connecting. And so that was just kind of a simple.
So we're going to come back, because one of the topics that I really, really want to talk to, I want you to talk to us about tonight, has to do with trust and about, building the trust between members of the family. But let's just, take a step back into this hypothetical example you gave me. So let's say it was an empowered parent that was in that situation. I've told my son a zillion times, always pick up your Lego. 5 minutes, or maybe the day after I tell him, I walk into his room and I step on a Lego and I just, I'm trying not to go bonkers. Like, what would an empowered parent do in that situation?
An empowered parent would look inside first and go, where am I at right now? Right? So I just stepped on a Lego. It does not feel good. I've spent the last week talking to this kid about, put your Legos away, right? So we're probably got that inner dialogue going on, and it's probably a little colorful, probably not what you want your kid to hear. We all get there. An empowered parent in that moment would go, is this truly the moment to address this? Like, do I need to step out for a second, calm myself down so that I can actually address the kid and the behavior? Or is it worth continuing on? Because what tends to happen, right, if I'm mad and I still go on, I'm going to do a lot more damage than if I would have just taken that break. Your kid's going to remember, right? I mean, they know you stepped on a Lego. Kids have good memories. They really do. And so that's what the empowered parent's going to do. Can I address this truly in the moment that's going to be beneficial? Or am I going to do more damage in this situation because of where I'm at personally? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's very interesting. One of the things that got me started on this path was Dr. Shifali's book, the conscious parent or conscious parenting. And, you know, one of the insights that I really, really got from that is that a lot of us, we operate almost on autopilot sometimes. That's why
Mm-hmm.
you step on that, and it's a reaction. It's a almost reflex reaction, and you've kind of,
Exactly.
so it's quite challenging, the space between the stimulus and the response, being able to catch yourself in that moment to act,
Mm-hmm.
think, and say, what will happen if I do XYZ? Is this the time I want to address this? You know, that is quite challenging. How do your clients cope with that? So you have people you've been coaching, you tell them, look, listen,
Mm-hmm.
these kind of scenarios, you want to check in with yourself to see if this is the time to address it. But how do they navigate that, you know, on the spur of the moment kind of reflex thing? How do they catch themselves in that moment?
So typically what I see is they don't at first. And so we do a lot of afterwards, like, where were you at? You know, we kind of track it. Where were you at in the moment? What were you feeling? What'd you miss? Where could you have intervened? Because yeah, it's a pattern, it's a cycle, it's that reaction. I want you to respond rather than react. But
Mm,
it's hard to get to that point. And so typically what happens is there is a little bit of failing. But I don't think that's a bad thing. Where do we learn our most from is when we mess up at first, you know?
yeah,
And
agree.
so a lot of the change I've seen comes when the parent is able to process afterwards. And so that the next situation, maybe it even took 5 seconds to explode rather than 3. I'll take that 2 seconds of progress because that tells me a window's opening now that you're starting to look in. You know, so it's one of those things. I've had parents tell me like, this empowered parenting thing is hard, and I'm like, yeah, it is. I'm still learning it and I'm putting it together, you know, kind of thing, because it asks a lot of us as parents, but the
Mm.
outcomes that we can see will be huge.
You know, the thing about it is, just like you said, a bit of progress is better than no progress at all. The fact
Right.
that you're consciously and deliberately trying to get better at something
Hmm.
will help you take steps forward and get better. Okay, so let's talk about trust. Like, one of the things that I've seen you've talked about it, you write about it, you've posted about it, is strengthening the parent-child connection. Right?
Right.
That sounds. I'm sure every parent wants that. Sounds it sounds really nice, right? But how do you do that, like tactically and practically? How do you make that happen?
Right. And relationships are an incredibly abstract concept, right? They're really weird. There's a lot of things that go into it. The younger your kid is, the more you as a parent have to put into it than what your kid's going to give back. It really is hard. And so that's why we kind of created this metaphor, the parent-child relational bank account, to kind of give that metaphor of how you can gauge the strength of the relationship. And so we do what's called, you know, deposits and withdrawals. The higher the balance in your bank account, the stronger that connection is going to be, right? So the time I do need to maybe discipline or correct, because my balance is higher, it's not going to take as much of a toll on the relationship. My balance is lower, you know, that's going to be a hit, and the kid may not appreciate that, which they never do, right? They don't. Who likes to be corrected? I don't like to be corrected, right? You know, and so we use that and we broke it down. So what's deposits and what's withdrawals? And I think that's kind of what you're getting to.
Yeah.
And sometimes we kind of confuse deposits. Like, they got to be these big things, these big trips to like Disney World, you know, and things like that. And really, those moments of connection are everywhere in your everyday. Kids don't quite know how to ask for attention sometimes in the most healthiest of ways or positive, you know. And as adults, we're going, we got work, we got this, you know, everything's pulling at our day and our energy, and we're just done. And we're like, no. So we miss those, right? My son loves dragons. He is obsessed with dragons, has been for 2 years now, I think it is. And I'm done with dragons. Like, I'm done, you know. But every time he comes up to me and says, I want to tell you about dragons, it's not just about dragons. Right now is, I want to connect. I
Mm.
want I want to be with you. And so I'm like, tell me about him. And I already know what he's going to say. I already know. But I'm connecting with him. I see that as a bid for connection with me, right? And so, and it's got to be genuine. Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, dragons have wings, good job. Like, right? That's not going to work. It's that genuine interaction. But it's simple things like that, those simple, your kid comes up and is tapping you and you're like, leave me alone. Well, you just missed an opportunity. They were tapping you for a reason. So sometimes it can be something as simple as that. My daughter loves when every now and then she'll run by and she'll just put her head on my knee and I just put my hand on her back. She goes, ah, and then she runs off and she's happy. That was a simple deposit. That built trust. She knew in that moment I needed connection and dad gave it to me. So she's starting to sense, oh, and the more we do that, because trust is built up over time, positive experiences, consistency, the more we do that, the more our kid starts to trust us. But if we ignore the small things, especially when they're younger, and then suddenly they're 15, 16, dealing with drugs, sex, and all those hard topics, but we've ignored the small topics, why are they going to come to us for the big ones? Kind of thing.
That's really interesting. And, it's interesting that you mentioned this now. So a couple of nights ago, I do this wind down thing with my kids when they're going to bed. And I was asking my daughter, what are the things that maybe mommy and daddy do that I asked, what are the things that we do that make you not so happy? And what are the things that we do that make you really, really, really happy? And when it got to the really, really happy part, I thought she was going to say, oh, because she loves like going out to fun places and all of that. So I thought she was going to say when we go out to like the park or to, to the theme park, one of these things. But she said every time I do something that makes her laugh a lot, that makes her so happy. And I thought to myself, so this girl could have talked about, and like we live in Dubai, right? So there are a plethora of things that kids can do, expensive things. But she didn't mention any of those things. What she said was every time I do stuff that makes her like really laugh, that to her is, and I thought to myself, that cost me nothing and I could do it a whole lot. And I could tell there was a lot of sincerity in what she was saying. So one of the things that I thought to myself, and it's interesting that you mentioned this now, is that I want to be hunting during the day for opportunities to do a lot of that.
Right.
Simple but powerful. So that's kind of like what you mean by investing in that bank account, looking for opportunities to do things that help you really connect with your kids and make them happy, right?
Right. Exactly.
Brilliant. That's great. Okay, so let's talk about discipline. Now, that's also something else that you've mentioned. And there are a couple of forums that I'm in, a couple of parenting forums, and we've bounced a lot of these ideas off each other. And I know for parents, it's kind of hard. First of all, I understand that a lot of us misuse the word discipline, right? But it's something that a lot of us think about. Like we love our kids, but we need to draw the line at some point regarding specific things. Can you tell us from your perspective, what is discipline and how should parents go about it?
Yeah, discipline is kind of obviously a complicated topic. There's so many different schools of thoughts on it. I know where I live in the area, it's almost like become this dichotomy. Either there's like the hardliners who will go full in whatever it takes, and then the ones that just cover for their kids, I'll do whatever, and now they're all entitled and like that's kind of what I deal with out where I'm at, and I don't know if it's similar where you're at for that kind of thing. But really, like discipline is meant to be a way to teach your kids, right? Yeah. Our kids they're learning how to navigate their world, and that part of our job as parents is to help them learn how to do that. And sometimes that means course correction. We have it at work, You always get that nice email from your boss that says, hey, we need to talk about that report you missed. And you're like, oh, right? You know what's coming, right? So yeah, we have to as parents. And I think a lot of the times what I see is kind of what we were talking about earlier. I'm reacting rather than responding. So I'm waiting until my kid does something to then address the situation. A lot of what we try to do with the parents we work with is more proactive. I want to put limits in place and a structure in place before the event even happens. So that could be something as simple as, hey guys, we're going to the store today. Last time it got a little out of hand. So today, this is, I want to see calm bodies. I don't want us taking stuff off the shelf without asking. I don't want loud screaming. We're not going to be getting a candy bar today. That's just, we're going for these things. If we start screaming, we're done. We just leave the store. If we keep going, then maybe we can go to the park afterward, that kind of thing, where we put the expectation out in front. And it's hard to do. It sounds so easy, like, oh yeah, I'll talk to my kid before we go to the store, except for the fact I have dinner to make. I've got to get my kid to soccer practice, and I've got to do this, and right? And so one of the things we've developed to kind of help with that is these 4 criteria that we called CAPS. So great acronym, right? Clear, applicable, practical, and steady. So we want to look at, are the methods I'm using, can I answer yes to these? So clear is simply that, right? The rules are out in the open, that everybody understands what the rules are. Because I think sometimes as parents, we assume our kids know the rule because we've said, don't do this. But then we go into a new context and it's a whole new place to them and they don't transfer it over. And so then we're like, what are you doing, right? So clear is really making sure the expectations are known by all. And that includes the kids. And this is where when kids get older, like 6, 7 years old, you can start including them too. Like, what's your thoughts on this? Because the more input they have, the more they're going to buy into what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I had an Ariel on a couple of weeks ago, and that one of the things he talked about was how we all need to have a certain sense of autonomy. And with a lot of the rules that are going on and a lot of the heavy-handedness that parents seem to have, kids feel robbed of that sense of autonomy. And so you want them to do stuff, but if you can get their buy-in, they're 10 times more likely to do it.
Right. Because when it's my choice, now I own it.
Yeah.
But if you're just telling me what to do, well, I have no problem telling you where I want you to go, kind of thing, because it's you. It's not my buy-in. But now that I've said, hey, this is what I'm willing to do, it's kind of like this natural process between humans. If I've agreed to it, I tend to want to follow through because I want, 1, to be a man of my word, but 2, I don't want to let you down because I just gave you that commitment. So the more we can get kids engaged, the more they're likely to do that. And so in addition to the clear with the rules, we also want to be clear of the consequence. Now, consequence is a word that tends to get used only for the negative, right? But consequence simply means an outcome. Positive, negative, neutral, whatever, just what could happen, right? So if we go to the store, right, we might go to the park afterwards if you're on your best behavior and we're able to do what we need to do, or we might just have to get in the car and go, right? Those are potential outcomes, right? And this is where the applicable, the A of CAPS comes in, is whatever the outcome's going to be that we can control, right? So if your kid has a curfew and then you're out too late with their car, but it's you bought the car and the outcome is I get the keys, right? That's the A applicable. That would be applicable, right?
Yeah.
You didn't come in on time. The keys have to come to me. Now, if I say the keys have to come to me for 2 years, is that really applicable? Or is even with the P practical? Can I follow through with that? Am I going to really hold on to my kid's keys for 2 years? That kid's going to go steal cars or whatever, right?
Yeah, definitely not.
Right. And so that's the thing. Applicable, it's got to fit the situation. Right. And that's sometimes where it can get tricky with like natural consequences. And then sometimes we throw a little extra on. Right. So a kid reaches up and touches a stove. The natural consequence is they get burnt. That sucks. It's a teaching moment. Going above and beyond is, well, now you have to go to your room for 30 minutes too. Why? How is that applicable? That kind of thing. Right. And so they might need to leave the kitchen, like if they've been reaching up and stuff, that's still. But if I'm sending them elsewhere or whatever, and it just doesn't fit the situation, we're going too far. We're going too high, right? And then the practical again is, can I follow through with it? I'm sure you've probably heard, like, I'm going to ground you for a year. Number one, who wants to ground their kid for a year? Like, you're going to be stuck with that kid for a year who's upset, wants to make it the worst year for you possible. They win, right? I mean, kind of thing. Right. So that's that one, that practical. Can I go through it with it? If I take you to the store, right? And sometimes you have to kind of gauge where you're at as a parent. Maybe if it's like essentials, I have to get this, you figure out a different route. But if it's one of those like, oh man, yeah, we were gonna get this, but you're done, let's go, right? You can follow through with that. And it's the practical and the next one, the steady, that tend to be where as parents we struggle the most. Do I consistently do it? Do I follow through, right? So the clear, we set the rules, we set the expectations, everything's applicable, we've all agreed to it, I can follow through with it, but do I do it every time? Because again, trust is built up over time, right? It's amazing how quickly we can lose trust, right? So if I promise to my son, we have a local dinosaur museum, and if I promise to him, hey, I'm going to take you to that, it's going to be great, right? Because he thinks they're dragons, kind of thing. And I say, we're going to go to that, we're going to have so much fun, we're going to do it tomorrow, and then I don't take him.
You've broken that trust, yeah?
Broken that trust, right? And that's a grand example. That's an easy one to see. But even on some of these other ones, right? Kids want structure in their lives. There's enough, chaos outside of our homes for our kids to need that. Where can I stand? Well, the way we can build that in our homes is that we follow through with what we say. So if I'm saying this is going to be the outcome, when you come home after midnight, the keys are mine for a day or whatever's been agreed upon, but then you don't do it and they still get to have their keys. They get to have fun, yeah, and they're like, oh, that's cool. But they just lost a little respect for you too because you didn't follow through. Doesn't mean they're going to like it, right? I mean, who likes to have that happen, right, when we get disciplined? But they still we earn respect from them when we follow through and we go through with it.
For sure. And you're teaching them how to behave in future, because if all you do, if you threaten, or not threaten, if you promise and say, look, if this happens, this is the repercussion, and you don't do it, then there's in their head, they say, if he says it next time, it still won't happen. And so and that is teaching them a bad pattern that they take away, even apart from the family or home. They take that to school or into work environment and say, people can give rules. Doesn't mean they're going to follow through all the time. Hey, exactly. that is brilliant. So we're running to the end of our session, but tell my guys where they can find you.
Where they can find me. All right. It's pretty easy. I'm on a website, www.empoweringthejourney.com. There it is right there.
All right.
We offer 3 different lines of services. So the first one is individual development, right? And even for parenting, that's important, right? We talked about that, self-awareness. So it looks at the way we think, the way we handle our emotions, and things like that. The second line we offer is relationship building. So with our partners, how do we form a strong relationship? What goes into a positive, healthy relationship, and what are some stuff we can cut out, kind of thing. And then obviously our third is the parenting. You can also find us on Facebook with the Life Empowerment Organization. You can look up Andrew Chris and you'll find me. Hopefully, I don't think there's a ton of Andrew Chris's in the world, kind of thing. But the easiest way is right there. We have, an email you can contact us on. There's a weekly newsletter you can sign up for, things like that.
Okay, brilliant. So my final question for you, Andrew. So let's fast forward. Let's go forward in time. You're 80 years old. Your son and your daughter are around the table with loads of friends, right? And your son and daughter, or either of them, stand up to talk about the impact you had on their lives and how your influence shaped them into becoming the person they are. What would you like them to say, or what do you hope they would say that you did?
That's a fantastic question. I hope that they would say that I was there for them and helped them learn to take control of their lives too. I didn't just overstep, but that they learned, 1, I'm there for them, but 2, they can do it. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for the time, for coming on the show, for sharing all that you have with us. And I definitely trust that a lot of people will come check you out and, benefit from the resources that you and your wife and your organization have to share with everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. You too.
Hey guys, thanks so much for sticking around to the end. I trust that you took away some value from what Andrew had to share with us. Remember, a lot of what he talked about was searching for those moments during the day when you can build trust with your child, um, finding that space between the action and the stimulus and the response, to find that sweet spot to decide, is this the response that I want to have right now? Is this the time to have this conversation with my child? I trust you had a good time with us tonight. Make sure you subscribe to our Facebook page so that every time we bring on guests like this, you get notified. Take care, my friends. Until next time, be well.